Welcome to the August District One breakfast discussion. We have some wonderful guests for you today. One of our guests is the session that I invited into this prior commitments. But I do want to welcome District Four, Ryan Beatty, up to introduce himself. He is, I guess, still a new guy. I'd say, yeah. Just to give you some updates and say hello.
Good to see everybody. Good morning. Again, Ryan Beatty, District 4. So, Councilmember's right. I swore in January, so I've been there 7 months now. Just kind of figured out where the restrooms are in that building. So we're off to a decent start. I'm focusing on 4 things right now for our community, particularly in our district and District 4. Which, if you're not aware of District 4, a little different than the city districts, Brandon's district in particular. The southern border is Douglas. The east side border, for the most part, is Oliver, but will cut up to Woodlawn when you get up towards Keachai. Goes all the way to the county border and then all the way to the west side, 119th Street. So downtown Wichita, Old Town, Midtown, the north end, northeast Wichita. We got Park City, Valley Center, Mays, 105,000 people in this district. So incredibly diverse. It's incredibly, it's an incredible district. It's really the most unique district, honestly, in our entire county. Not just from a cultural, I think, standpoint, but socioeconomics. I mean, everything about this district is incredible, and I'm really honored to serve in it. We're doing 4 things. We're in budget season right now. The city is as well, but the county, we're going to work to pass a budget on August the 23rd. The recommended budget from county manager, which we're working through right now, is about $540 million. There's 46 departments in county government. Mostly public safety, public health, and some human services like ComCare and other things that we do. And I'm working on 4 things in this budget. The first thing that we're working on is stability in county government, health in county government. Some of you probably have seen over the news in the last few years that we've had incredible instability in county government. Do you remember the EMS crisis we had in this community where we lost 1/3 of our paramedics in 2019 and 2020? And you may say, well, everybody's experiencing a staffing crisis. And to a certain extent, that's true. But when you have staffing crisis in public safety, it legitimately puts people's lives in danger. And here's how that works in EMS. The average response time on a 911 call for EMS across the country is about 9 minutes. There were certain parts of our county, we were averaging 24 minutes. So think about a child choking or drowning. Think about a car accident or cardiac arrest. People's lives were legitimately in danger if we couldn't stabilize departments like EMS. Think about ComCare. That's our community behavioral health provider here. Do we have a mental health, substance use crisis in this community? I think by and large, everybody would say we do. And if you don't believe so, you should talk to any teacher in the classroom right now. They'll tell you what they're experiencing. We were down 200 full-time employees at ComCare in the midst of this crisis. Starting wage of a county fireman was $14.60 right before I got there. So this was creating incredible instability in public safety services, and that's what we're trying to focus on in this budget. Staffing stability, competitive wage, and the health of county government. I'll also talk a lot about economic health. And economic health that is equitable, diverse, and spread out across our entire county. Let's just be honest, there's been certain parts of our county that has been the concentration of a lot of economic development and economic health for a long time. And we've got to make sure that there are other pockets, other areas in our community that are getting equitable opportunity for economic development, something I'm focused on significantly in this budget and future budgets. Also talk a lot about this mental health crisis and the homelessness issues that we're experiencing. My district, our district, in downtown Wichita in particular, it really is ground zero for the homelessness crisis that we're experiencing. You're going to hear from Matt today. He's going to talk a lot about the continuum of care. We're trying to work closely together with United Way in some of these pursuits. And there are things we're doing in regards to funding and systems and infrastructure, but the conversation that we always have to keep top of mind in the homelessness issue and conversation is the humanity of this. So we can't forget that these are human beings, these are people, and we've got to do right, not just by our community, and we've got to do right by people. So I want to make sure that's always top of mind when we're talking about funding and structures and things like that. And lastly, it's not a budget issue, it's more just a representative issue, is making sure that I'm accessible and we're leading with civility in this community. I think for many, many years here, we've allowed political division and to really destabilized relationship in this community. It didn't happen with COVID. It didn't happen with certain political candidates. This is something that's brewed for a generation in this community, and it's ripping at the soul of this community. And what I try to do and continue to do, and what I try to do with my colleagues in the city and the county is to demonstrate what could be here when you have collaboration and civility. So those are things that I'm working on, talking about frequently in our budget. But if you have any questions, I mean, I only wanted to share a couple minutes because I really want to hear from Matt. But if you have any questions on county business or mental health, homelessness, hold the homelessness conversation for Matt. But our budget, things of that sort, I'm happy to field any questions and do my best.
Did you put money in the budget to pay for someone to be the head of the health department?
So we do have a health department head, a leader, Adrian Burns is. Now, what's unique about the health department lead is just we've got to find some ways to do some functional consolidation around here. Let me give you a prime example that's very relevant to what's happening in this community right now, the 29th and Grove contamination issue. And this is a significant problem, 40 years of bad communication, mistrust, for a lot of reasons. But yeah, KDHE at the state that manages these things. The city has their environmental resources department, and the Sedgwick County has our public health department. None of these systems are communicating effectively together. And the result of that is slow response time for remediation of this contamination, but our community is not being communicated with appropriately. So we've got to find ways, that's a little bit of a spin off of your question, but we're talking about how do we effectively communicate to this community? And a lot of it means there's just broken collaboration with all these systems that we've really got to iron out. It's going to be hard work and tough work, but we need leadership that can do it. And again, it's about being right by people. People need to be communicated with their local government and the people to serve, and we've got to find better ways to do it. So Adrian is the head of the public health department.
And Adrian's an MD?
She is not an MD. So we have Sedgwick County has a medical director. It's been around for a really, really, really long time. And they have separation because the health department in Sedgwick County really is about education and research more so than service. There's a lot of confusion of what the health department really actually does. But to answer your question in a long way, we do have a director, and she's pretty active, particularly in the 29th and Grove contamination issue. Other question?
Can you clarify, and I've heard in a couple of the previous Sedgwick County meetings that there's like a budget surplus, but the state won't allow us to have that money back.
Yeah.
Is there something like that? And how do we work on that?
So there's a lot to that, actually. What happens is so 46 departments in county government, the city of Wichita is a little different. They have 16 or 17. County is a different form of government. We're actually a political subdivision of the state. So of those 46 departments, there's 16 departments we manage on behalf of the state. Aging, elections, district attorney, sheriff's office, on and on and on. We have electeds, 5 electeds in county government: sheriff, DA, county clerk, register of deeds, treasurer. We have appointed people from the state that fall under county government, like the county clerk or the elections commissioner. What happens is they appropriate dollars through, and if we don't use all those dollars, or if they don't utilize all of it, they actually take it back. Now, so that's kind of what you're getting at, is we've got to have some sort of reform of how we're able to capitalize on those dollars and use all those dollars. A lot of that is grant funded, that you have to utilize the entire grant. But let me give you something that's even more pressing, in my opinion. Is the 16 departments that we manage on behalf of the state. These are important things that we do. The expenditures in those departments are up about 9.5% the last 10 years. Okay, like everything else. The state aid for those 16 departments, if they're giving to Sedgwick County, is down 31%. So what's happening is your income tax dollars that you pay to Kansas, your sales tax dollars and your fees that you pay to Kansas are designed to fund the services that we operate on behalf of them here locally. But yet they're not funding it appropriately. So your property tax dollars now in the county general fund are having to go to meet the gap. They're taxing you twice for services they should be contributing efficiently. So I was floored that people at the county haven't been yelling about this much longer. And when I got in and started looking at the balance sheets and income statements and wondering what's going on here, it will be a part of our legislative agenda next year. Because the state needs to do more. They've got to do more to fund the services that we're doing here on behalf of the state. So, hope that helps.
How many sheriff deputies are we down now in the county?
We're down about 65 at last count. When I first got into office, we were down 112. And that's a significant number when you look at some of the things that are happening in regards to substance use, mental health, and some of the crime that we're seeing in our community. Here's what's really difficult about that. The sheriff's office is different than WPD and some of the things that they do. The sheriff runs the jail. They're actually combining pods at the jail and removing commissioned deputies from the street to put them in the jail with mandatory overtime shifts because they just don't have enough people. And the challenge with that is not only is it dangerous for the jail population, it's also dangerous for these deputies that are working the jail. Then we can't do some of the things that we need to do within the jail to make sure people are actually becoming better, particularly in mental health and substance use. 2/3 of the people in our jail right now, about 1,200 people, 2/3 of them have a substance abuse addiction, 1/3 of them have a mental health diagnosis. So if we're combining pods because we don't have enough people, then how do we serve these people to make sure that when they do get out, if they get out, about 90% of them are going to return to our community, that they're walking out healthier than what they went in before. I was floored again, when I first got there in January, there were 0 social workers in the Sedgwick County Jail. 0. But yet, 1/3 of people have a mental health diagnosis. So that company we changed, it's not the social workers sitting in the Sedgwick County Jail to help them out. Short answer, a long answer to your question.
That's a good answer. One further, you're talking about the 29th Street Plume area. Yes. I do not understand why the health department or whatever department it is in the county, I don't think they're doing enough in the community to help the people.
Agreed.
And so somebody, that director who we got,
I agree with you. And that's part of the conversation. What we see here amongst a lot of other issues is we've seen a failure in communication. And that's what we're working on, really working on a daily basis, is how do we strengthen these communication systems? Historically, contamination sites, now let me be the bearer of really bad news. The 29th and Grove, in my opinion, is the most flagrant misjustice that we see of these contamination issues. It's bad, 40 years of people not being honest with you. That's one of about 210 contamination sites in Sedgwick County. Most people don't know there's poison living under their feet or in their water. Most people aren't aware of this. So we have a bigger problem at hand. Our focus right now is 29th and Grove, because it's immediate. We need to work on this now. But we've got to find a way. KDHE at the state has been the department that has been responsible for most of the communication, and they failed us. There's no other way to put it. They've just failed us. So we're trying to take more control back here at the local level, particularly with the communication piece of this, that we can take control here and communicate better. And there is no denying it, that the communication has been broken on all levels of government. But I promise you, I know he will. I'm gonna be right beside him. We're gonna fix it. We're absolutely.
he'll be on his back.
Yeah, any other questions? Go ahead.
On the subject of the pollution issue,
Yes.
is it more a lack of communication or a lack of action?
I would say honestly, probably a mix of both. I will tell you that the remediation, 29th and Grove in particular, the remediation's happening. I mean, there's a remediation plan from Union Pacific. It is happening. Now, I would tell you in this one particularly, it's delayed. I mean, it's been late. But most of the remediation issues on the other 210 plus sites, there's been remediation efforts. The challenge is that nobody knows. Nobody knows these things. And I think, and I know Brandon agrees, that if you have poison in your water, poison under your the air you're breathing, you deserve to know these things. You deserve to know. It's not only is it morally correct, it's just a decent ethical thing to do. And it's good government to make sure that you know. Government didn't cause these pollutions, but government has a responsibility to help clean it up, to communicate to the people so they're in the loop of what's going on. And it's just, honestly, this has been one of the most disheartening things in this whole process for me. It's just to see the lack of communication in some of these things that I think is just incredibly important to people. This isn't a partisan issue, right? This is just about doing it right by people and making sure you have good government service on the local level. Last question, and then I can.
Last time you were here, you talked about how you're the head of the community health. And when the next biodisease comes out next summer, what would you do different?
Great question. So what he's getting at is Sedgwick County is the Board of Health. for our area, 525,000 people in Sedgwick County. We have a health department. There are a couple of things that we're doing, and then I'm gonna bridge it with what the state legislature has done recently. We are actually building a $20 million facility to better house PPE and better emergency response in this. And some people are like, that's not needed. You don't need a $20 million facility. Now, listen, I wasn't there during COVID, but I've heard the horror stories of what happens when you're not prepared. They didn't have enough PPE. They had no coordinated efforts. So I'm thankful that at the county and the city, that there's actual conversations happening in preparation. If or when this happens again, that they're going to be prepared for a better response. So we're actually building a very large facility to house not just our emergency response to the pandemic, but also emergency response to natural disasters like the Andover tornado, when we were able to go support what's happening over there. So those conversations started happening before I got there, frankly. Commissioner Cruz was leading in that effort. My predecessor, she was leading in that effort. And I know Brandon's been very much involved at the city level on those efforts. I will tell you though, that in response to COVID, the state legislature, whether they're right or wrong, they really did come in and neuter the county health departments, the Board of Health, as they basically took all power they have to make decisions like to remediate some of these things on a local level. So the Board of Health at the county was stripped of quite a bit of authority in some of these areas. Again, I'm not stating a position whether I agree or disagree, but the next go around, if we get into something like this, it will look significantly different because the state will have more authority than what the local governments will.
We disagree.
Yeah. You know what, there's a lot of things at the state that I disagree with. It really, I'll just finish with this. The services that impact our people's lives the most are happening on a local level. They're happening on a local level. I believe very strongly in an active local government because the government closest to the people is the government that serves them best. And there's many times at the federal level and the state level that there is such bottleneck in what's happening there, and the resources we need that are supposed to come here to the local level aren't getting here. And we've got to do a better job with our state partners in ensuring that happens. So we got to be loud, we got to be active, and we got to elect good people that are willing to contend for local government in our city and our county. If we do that, I think we'll have a voice. Listen, the state politics now, it flows through Sedgwick County. It flows through Sedgwick County. We hold the keys to this, what happens in the state right here in Sedgwick County, and we got to flex a little bit of muscle down here sometimes. So, and I intend to help us do that. Thank you for the time. Appreciate it. Excited, Matt, to hear what you have to share today. Thanks, man.
All right, thank you, Commissioner Cruz. Again, as you heard, one partner on the county level.
Commissioner Bailey, you are.
Commissioner Bailey said.
I'm Vincent right now. Yeah, I'll tell you.
Commissioner Beatty has been very helpful. And again, because he said it before, he was right when he got elected, and I was sitting on the bench why he did call me.
First guy.
But he's kept his promise. He's really worked hard, and behind the scenes, the same passion has been happening. And we will have some really good information on 29th and Grove coming out here in the next month. So excited about that and the hard work and all the partners who've been a part of it. But again, Commissioner Beatty has been pretty awesome to work with. Our next speaker is the Urban League of Kansas. And all to talk about what they've been doing, and I think the neighborhood night out celebration coming up on Tuesday. So,
Thank you, Councilman Johnson. Good morning to everyone.
Good morning.
As he stated, my name is Frankie Kirkendall, and I do work for the Urban League of Kansas. The Urban League has been in existence since 1950. And one of the things that I'm most proud about is when I say that I am an urban league. And what that means is that in 1980, I started to work at Wichita State University. The Urban League referred me to Wichita State HR department. And when I walked into the office, I told them that the Urban League referred me to them. The director of HR shook my hand and said, because the Urban League referred you, I'm going to hire you. So I was hired at Wichita State without ever filling out an application. I had to later, for payroll purposes, but I was hired on the spot. And I retired from Wichita State University 35 years later as the director of HR. So most of my career has been at Wichita State. And one of the things that I decided was to stay involved with an organization, nonprofit, that helped me at the time when I was a single parent with a child. Not only was I raising my daughter, but I was raising a nephew because my sister strung out on drugs. But this organization helped me to get a position. And so I've remained committed to this organization. Through the ups and downs, I've been there with the Urban League. And part of the time, once I retired from Wichita State, I went and volunteered, no pay at Urban League for about 2.5 years. I was determined that organization was going to remain open. So here we are today. We are still open. Yes, I feel like I'm in church right now. And you're saying, well, I thought the Urban League closed. That may be true, but we never did. I was there, sometimes by myself. But today I'm very pleased to say that we have 2.5 staff. So we're growing again. You know, things don't happen overnight, but we are growing and all of us are getting paid, and that's a good thing. But as Councilman Johnson said, and I meant to pass out those handouts, and I'm going to Tasha, those handouts are sitting there in front of me, just to let you know about a few things going on at the Urban League. And he already talked about the neighborhood night out that we are hosting next Tuesday. And that's on August the 8th from 4 p.m. During primary elections, I was there at 4 a.m. because we're also a voting site. But next Tuesday, August 8th, from 4 p.m. to 8 p.m., I do invite you to please come out and join in with us as we get to know our neighbors. And I'm thankful we have such great partners. And one of them is here today, and that's Malcolm Carter from Facts Not Fear. And what he did, along with one of our staff, they went through and canvassed the neighborhood on Friday. We want to invite our neighbors so you'll know who the Urban League is. So we're gonna have free food, snow cones, and kids zone, and good music. If you know DJ Ricky Rick, he will be providing the music for us. We're gonna have a lot of door prizes. I tell you, a lot of companies are very generous in Wichita. All you have to do is ask. So we have a lot of door prizes that will be given away. We have 25 vendors who will be there. Facts Not Fear, Hunter Health, Great Man. So we're excited about that. We're gonna be hosting some health workshops. We've been hearing a lot about mental health today. So we are going to have a young lady who's going to do workshop sessions on mental health. We're also going to have workshop sessions from Aetna to help people. Maybe you haven't signed up for the Medicare, or you don't understand how Medicare works, but we're going to have workshops on Medicare. There's going to be about 4 or 5 other workshops going on the inside of our building as well. This is the program, and I'm so sorry I didn't write out what KEEP stands for, but that acronym KEEP are for eligible families that have dependent children ages 18 and younger who are school age, whether you're in the public school system, whether you're in private school. But the governor has this program that if you are eligible based on income base, you can receive $1,000 per child to help you with the school supplies. Maybe they need an iPad or whatever it is. The Urban League is going to have a table there so that we can help to sign up these parents for this KEEP program. And we're going to continue that. We're going to spend up her money. She's saying is there. We're going to make our people aware of it. So we're going to start that discussion on next Tuesday. But we're going to continue to have people come into the office of the Urban League so we can help parents. $1,000, you know what you're gonna do with if you got 6 kids, that's $6,000 that these parents are not aware of. And I know that's probably going on other places too, but we need to make sure our neighborhood knows that this money is available to eligible, I keep saying that word, eligible families, and that we can help them to receive that. So very quickly, I only had a few minutes because we do have a speaker today. Some of the things that we do at the Urban League on that very last page, is our priority program. I'm not gonna go through them, but we have 7 key priority programs. And the one that I talked about personally that affected me 40-some years ago, and I'm still here, was the workforce development. That's where I fell up under. But I also needed help with other things as well at the Urban League. So we have programs on safe, stable housing. We offer the first time home buyers workshop, youth empowerment. In fact, you have that little short handout flyer announcing our fall youth empowerment workshop. So if you have youth between the ages 14 to 20, 21, that says 16, but we've had them as young as 14, please contact our office so that we can enroll them in this 4-week session that will start in September. But again, that last page, lists all of the program, very active programs that we are holding at the Urban League. So as I take my CQS, is the Urban League still relevant today in Wichita? Yes, it is. And that's where we need you to help spread the word. Thank you so much, Councilman Jennings.
Thank you, Mr. Kirkendall. I keep thinking Ryan's never gonna let me live that one down.
That's National Night Out time.
Yep.
That's the
Yes.
same time.
Yes, sir.
Neighborhoods will be meeting all over the city. I know we will be meeting at that time. Okay.
Thank you, Ms. Foster.
So I'll bring that one up from the end, because I was gonna say that at the end, but yes, National Night Out is Tuesday. Most of the District 1 celebrations start 5 o'clock, 5:30, and we'll go, one is going until 10 o'clock at night. Most of the companies wrap up 8:30 or 9. We are doing something unique this year. It's not super unique if you knew Councilwoman Williams, but it's unique for me because I never did it. We're gonna have a band. We're having some of our DAB members and our chief of police will be joining us, and we're gonna try to jointly hit as many of those celebrations as possible Tuesday. So if you see us there and we're only there about 10, 15 minutes, it's because we have 14 to go to. And so we're trying to make everyone that we can and say hello, but it should be a great night. Neighborhoods come out. Often that's where you can get some really good food and you figure out which of your neighbors can cook the best. Because the one over in Crestview Heights had for a while, some probably the best catfish I've had. I always ask them to sit me a plate to the side. Then Mr. Roseboro will make sure you have as many hamburgers, hot dogs as you can eat. So it's a great time. So Tuesday night, if your neighborhood's not having one, definitely check out the neighborhood that is. But thank you, Ms. Bostic, for bringing that up. Our next speaker with the United Way will talk about the continuum of care, but before he comes up, I heard this presentation from Vice President over at United Way, Abel Frederick, said 2 months ago at the downtown meeting. And just hearing the incredible work that's going on, that although being on council, I knew about some of it, but just hearing about how all of the collaboration Matt's going to talk about happened. But the thing that stuck out to me was the story that Abel said, and you'll correct these numbers if I'm wrong, but out of 25 people that they had, 22 that got housed pretty quickly. And the other 3 were in the process of getting housed at the time. And I thought that was incredible. And especially for me, with a lot of the stuff that many of you have seen in the unbearable, horrific situations people are living in. One thing I haven't just completely always said publicly is most of the people that you see talking to me get evicted. It is retaliatory. And there's not much we can do about it. Some state laws have to change. We'll be talking with our friends at the county about some things. As a city, we're going to try to take some action. But one of the more heartbreaking things is, as I'm talking to these folks, and I know they're going to be evicted, and I know they're going to be unhoused, and then I hear this presentation, I now know there could be some potential help to get people back housed and maybe in some better situations. So it's really important to be able to have the United Way here to talk to you all about that. And to me, seeing that program continue to grow and develop is important because we do have a lot of terrible situations. We have one landlord right now just evicting anybody who complains, and I get a lot of them. I just got 2 yesterday. Literally complain, not even reaching out to the city. Complain, they're getting evicted. So that's terrible. But we have this wonderful program that I think will be able to start helping folks. So as you have those things happen, you have a program like this. So with that, Matt Lowe with United Way, we'll talk about this awesome program and things. Mr. Baby and I.
Thank you, Johnson. As you said, my name is Matt Lowe, and I'm with the United Way of the Plains, and I'm gonna try to do this on a little different presentation than the one that he heard specifically from Abel at the meeting. I wanted to get a couple of other things in as well. Just want to have the opportunity, programs we have in United Way that I think are important for people to know about. Just to follow up on the story that he shared, yes, we had we have an open door homeless outreach center right in the middle of downtown that sees 150 people a day. And we were looking for like an access point, if you will, of like how those people can enter into a system of care where we can get them housed. And they said, we don't have that here. What we have is we have the ability to get someone a meal. We have the ability to get someone some laundry. They can get their mail here. They can get some medical stuff here, but we don't have the time or the resources to be able to sign people up for housing. So what we at the United Way said, I'm like, well, I have a staff member who is a housing navigator. What if we sent her over to the open door for just 3 hours a week and she could sign people up and make referrals to housing? And so we did that pilot program, and she went in over the course of 2 months. She connected 25 people to housing. And as he said, 22 of them did get housed and are remain housed today. And the others are still, I'm not sure where they're at in the process. But from that, Open Door said, we see the importance of this. So they have now hired a full-time person that is doing that at that facility as well. So that just to kind of follow up a little bit extra on that story. But the things that we want to cover today, I want to talk about 211. I want to talk about the social determinants of health, some United Way strategy, and some of our resources, and then I'll give you the opportunity for questions. As he expressed, my name is Matt Lowe. I'm the Community Impact Manager for Basic United Way of Plains. What that basically means is that I manage the funded and non-funded relationships with programs that support people in the areas of rent, utility assistance, protection from abuse, homeless services, and food insecurity. All of the foundational kind of things that each one of us need to be able to build a healthy and productive life. Without those things, we're in crisis, right? I also lead the Continuum of Care team to end homelessness in Sedgwick County. Before I get into all that, one resource that I think is not talked about enough in our community is 211. If you have any kind of need, or if you come across anyone who has any kind of need and they're struggling, they're like, I don't know where to go get food. I have a mental health issue. I'm not sure who to call. 211 is your one-stop shop. We had 154,000 calls to 211 last year. We cover all 98 counties across the state of Kansas. So it's not just Sedgwick County, we cover the entire state. But the top 5 results, the top 5 reasons that people call 211, rent, utilities, homelessness, shelter, and food, right? People are calling for these needs. And so we want you to be aware of that. There's cards out there if you want to take them or need them. 4 easy ways to get connected. You can call 211. You can text 898-211. You can look on the internet. If you click and do a search for like food in 67214, it'll pull up a list of pantries. And if you click on each one, it'll tell you what requirements there are, what their hours are, what you have to have, if you have to have an ID, or if you don't. It'll give you all of that information. They even have a lot of experience lately with the chat. People are able to chat and get directly to a 211 operator, and they'll give you some information on what you need. So a few years back, we got a new president and CEO at United Way of Plains, and when he's come in, one of the first things he started looking at is like, how does the United Way operate, and how do we want to best service this community? And in doing so, we looked at the social determinants of health. These are 5 areas that any community that you look at has to have health in order for the whole community to thrive. And so you have education, access, and quality, healthcare and quality, neighborhood and built environment, and social and community and context, and economic stability. Any community you look at, you need health in all of these areas. And a lot of times you'll find that maybe we struggle in some of these different areas. So as we are looking at our strategy at the United Way, we want to say like how we invest our resources, how we invest our time and how we invest your resources, we want to go to areas that are going to build each one of these components up. So we basically reorganize under 4 pillars. And so we have health, education, financial stability, and basic needs. And so just like I'm the community impact manager for basic needs, we have community impact managers for these other 3 areas as well. And their whole jobs is to come in and to look at the system as a whole in that area and look at what programs in the community are supporting those efforts, which ones are doing it well, which ones can use some more support, like what are the gaps, and then trying to find programs or trying to find grants or other things to fill those gaps so that we can have a healthier and more whole society. So what I want to do is kind of going through each one of those. I'm not going to spend a lot of time because I know it's a lot of things, but there are a few key programs that are offered through the United Way that I think are beneficial for all of us to know about. And in many ways, they're not often talked about, and I think they kind of fly underneath the radar. But you may need them. You may have friends and family members that can utilize these things, and so I want to get them out to you. And as I mentioned, I have tons of flyers and more information out here on the table outside where you signed in. Please take that stuff with you, distribute it, give it out. The first is Delta Dental. Delta Dental partners with the United Way to provide essentially free dental coverage for anyone who's working. So you have to have a job to participate in it, but that does not have dental insurance. So for just $5 a year is the deductible, you can get the entire array of dental services, everything from preventative to minor dental work to major dental work. And the coverage will last for up to 2 years. So if you or loved ones, that are working and, a lot of jobs don't offer really good dental coverage, if you can't afford it, please consider signing up for this. Any guesses on how we would sign up for Delta Dental? 211. 211. You just call 211. They'll get you set up with the Delta Dental program. So we had 159 individuals that received care through this program last year. I don't think it's utilized enough.
A big need is for older people who need dentures. I think that part of this.
I want to say yes, because it covers major services at 100%. And but I would refer that question to 211, or if you call and ask them, they can give you that specific detail. Good question. Good question. Another program in our health area is the single care pharmacy savings cards. There's nothing in these. I got a whole box of them out there, but again, prescriptions cost a lot of money. With this card, it has all of the information that you need. You get up to 80% off your prescriptions. So if you don't have insurance or something like that, please take those. I mean, over $500,000 was saved by prescription costs by participants in South Central Kansas last year. So please take those. We also have Operation Immunization every fall as we are almost towards the end of summer. We're in the heat of it right now, but we're getting closer. We know the flu season's coming. Please consider, think about this Operation Immunization. Basically, we partner with 5 area clinics. So in this area, Health Corps, we have Grace Med, we did Guadalupe Clinic, Hunter Health, and in the Guadalupe clinics down south. But we'll pick one day a year. There'll be advertisements around, but we give out 1,000 free flu shots every year. And I know there's other places you can get them too. So education, this is big right now. This has kind of been on the news a little bit because Dolly Parton Imagination Library, this is a phenomenal program. If you have children, grandchildren, nieces and nephews, neighbor kids, the kid at church, it does not matter, kids 0 through 5 years old, really consider signing them up for this program. The child will receive 1 free book a month from ages 0 through 5. So if you catch a young mom who's not quite had the baby yet, that's 60 books over the course of those 5 years. The statistics show that children need to be exposed to reading at an earlier age, and that the younger you can get them started and the faster you can get them committed to the love of reading, then the better they'll do in school and overall. So 11,427 children participated last year. The state of Kansas just came out and said that they want to offer this program to every zip code in the state, regardless of income. And so as a result of that, we also just gave out, I feel like, our 1,000th book. But Dolly Parton's coming to Kansas on August the 14th, I believe it is. She'll be in Overland Park, not coming to Wichita. Of course, that would be the stretch. I was like, okay, she's going to Kansas City, but coming to Wichita, now that's really gonna make a move. So anyway, I have your flyers out there. There's a brochure and it just has the information for how you sign up in the brochure. Please consider doing so for any of the children in your lives. Financial stability, 2 programs I want to point out here, VITA free tax preparation. If households $64,000 and under can sign up to get taxes done for free. If you're like me, some people are really good with the taxes and you can hammer it out and know all the deductions and know it all. But others like me might need a little help with that. So this is a free tax service that you can sign up again through 211. So January, February, they'll start doing these appointments. A record-breaking $8.4 million in refunds came back to this community as a result of this program last year. Yes, ma'am.
I have a question. So does that only apply to personal taxes or will they do schedule Cs also?
It is simple tax returns, so it would just be the basic taxes. Great question. And then the other is a new program, Bank on ICT. This is an initiative where several financial institutions have come together and they're offering banking accounts from like more higher risk individuals. So it's the purpose of it is trying to offset people going to the payday loans and doing all of that kind of stuff because they've set things in place like there's no overdraft fees and they're very low barriers to getting one of these accounts. So far, we've had 632 individuals who've been referred to this program. Again, just call 211 if that's something that you need. If you are working and you don't have a bank account, that's one of the first steps to financial health is getting that bank account and reestablishing with a financial institution. So please consider doing that or pass that around. We have flyers out there in the hall.
If you still owe money to a bank,
They will work with you. They will work with you. All right, and so next, we're gonna talk about basic needs. As mentioned, we specifically gonna hone in. We do a lot within basic needs. We do rent utility assistance for Textron and Spirit. We have food box deliveries. We have a lot going on in basic needs, but I want to spend the majority of our time here talking about the COC or the continuum of care. So every community has what's called a continuum of care, and the United Way is the lead agency for the continuum of care in Wichita. So if you look at the state of Kansas, there's a continuum of care in Topeka. There's a continuum of care in Kansas City. There's one that covers all of the rural counties. And then there's one here in Wichita. And it's a HUD-funded, community-led, and administered effort to end homelessness. And so HUD supports this. They will give money to help rehouse people who are experiencing homelessness. But in order to do so, they funnel it through this through the COC or through the continuum of care because they want to ensure that we're all working together as a community to address this issue. Because guess what? Homelessness is a community issue, right? And so it's going to take the community working together to solve the problem. We can't just look to the city and say, well, the city needs to figure it out. We can't just look to the county, say the county needs to figure it out. You can't just look to the faith-based groups or the nonprofits. It takes everyone working together. And so at the United Way, we have the honor of being what's considered the lead agency, which fits well because we're kind of like Switzerland in all of this, right? We don't really have, any agendas but ending homelessness. So here's some of the organizations who's in the continuum of care. It's anyone who wants to end homelessness. So we have city, we have county, we have nonprofits, we have health providers, we have mental health providers, we have education, we have pastors and churches. I mean, it's anyone who's committed and wants to come together and talk about and actionably talk about ending homelessness. We have monthly meetings that are more informational, resource based. We have weekly case conferencing where we look at people like almost by name and talk about what is needed. What's the next step for this person to be able to get them back in housing? We have subcommittees that work to tackle specific issues. And so that's who the continuum of care is. Our vision is that homelessness should be rare, brief, and non-recurring for all of our neighbors in Central County. Breaking that down a little bit further, rare. Homelessness should be rare because of rental assistance and financial stability. So it's one thing to just look at people who are experiencing homelessness. When I first started working in homeless services, 7 or 8 years ago, there was a big talk about chronically homeless, when we wanted to house the chronic homeless. And so a lot of resources and a lot of effort and conversations went around those people who were the most extreme cases, who had been homeless for a long time and had mental health and substance abuse issues. And so we focused almost so heavily there that people were pipeline just coming into homelessness on this front end. It needs to be a balanced system. In order for it to be rare, we have to have more programs that deal with homeless prevention and diversion, that somebody is behind on their rent, somebody's behind on their utilities, that we have financial resources and we have programs in place to be able to meet that need. We do have programs in town that can do that, right? You can call Center of Hope and they'll help you once, right? Maybe twice. What do you do then? What happens when you've used Center of Hope? Is if the next answer is, well, you can call the shelter, then we're not in a good place as a community, right? Because it costs more to put people in shelters. If you think about just the daily cost to house a family in a shelter, the staffing, the meals, the lights, all of that. Plus, at some point, they're going to want to leave shelter. So there's going to still need that rehousing services, whether it's a deposit and and some rental supports and that kind of thing. So it's way cheaper just to go ahead and pay that $700 rent payment or that $1,000 electric bill to keep people in housing. And so if we have services in place like that, then homelessness will be rare in our community, right? And if on the other end, our financial stability, that pillar is strong and that social determinant of health is showing healthy, then we have less people that are in need of homelessness services. It should be brief. Someone enters homelessness, they should be in and out. And that's where our goal is try, we're always going to need a shelter, but that if they enter, they're in there quickly and they're out. Our goal as a community is 30 days or less. That's kind of the benchmark we set for shelters. We're not there right now. We have some affordable housing issues in our community. Yeah, even right here in Wichita, Kansas. I know we're not San Francisco, we're not New York, but as Councilman Johnson mentioned, it's far too easy for people just to evict and then raise the rental rates, and they can rent their properties out to other people. But it should be brief. It should be non-reoccurring. When people are housed, they shouldn't return to homelessness. There needs to be supports there so that people can stay in housing. It should be for all of our neighbors. Everyone that is unhoused in our community is our neighbor and deserves housing. And then it's for all of Sedgwick County. That's where we focus our efforts. So how do we define success? Success is defined by reaching functional zero. Back in December, we brought in a lady by the name of Julia Orlando. She's from Bergen County, New Jersey. They're the first county in the entire United States to reach what they call functional zero for both veterans and chronically homeless people. And that, to define that, is when we have less people entering homelessness than we do leaving, right? So it's a functional system. It's much like I just said. We have a shelter, but they come in and out because we have a housing resource available, so they don't have to stay in homelessness. Right now, we're backlogged. We have close to 500 people on our by name list. People are experiencing homelessness right now, and we don't have housing resources for them. I'm talking specifically about veterans here a little bit. We have in our city housing set aside 300 Section 8 vouchers for people experiencing homelessness. They've issued all the vouchers. They just can't find units to rent, like find landlords that will rent to them. So we have a housing issue, and it's creating a backlog, which is going to cause you to see more homeless people. Will have more homeless neighbors. And so how do we get to functional zero? We do this by knowing everyone in the homeless community by name and by need, right? And I'm well aware that we can't just say, we can't look at how we get to know homeless individuals by if they access our services. It has to be a joint effort where not only people are accessing our services and we're finding out their name and their need, but we're also going out to where they're at, because many won't come in. We use that information to build housing resources that meet the need, much like we have conversations with something like I just mentioned, where we identify, hey, we need more landlords. So we start building strategy around how do we get more landlords. And we focus on one population at a time and fix what doesn't work as we go along. Because it's overwhelming. I've been doing this for a while. When I started out, I worked at Catholic Charities. I was at St. Anthony Family Shelter. And so, what made that great? We got to a point where 65% of the people leaving our shelter were exiting the permanent housing, and it was great. But what made it work so well is that we're focusing on families. And so we're able to laser focus all of our needs, all of our resources, all of our efforts around families, children, moms and dads, that kind of thing. If you start looking at the entire homeless population and you're like, oh, we got families and we got youth and we got domestic violence and we got chronic and we got better, it can be very overwhelming, and it can be, you end up with a shotgun approach, which you know, when you're trying to aim at a target and you use a shotgun, you're probably not going to hit it as well. Functional zero for veterans. In December, as I mentioned, we brought Julia Orlando in. She talked about functional zero. At that time, we made the commitment as a continuum of care that we wanted to reach functional zero for veterans. We were going to start with one population at a time. And veterans made the most sense because we have a great VA here. They already had some social workers and people that were already working with homeless veterans. We had a veteran shelter. And so we made this announcement. And when we did our point in time count in January, we had 49 homeless veterans identified. Since that time, there's been a 35% reduction in veteran homelessness. And so we're down to 32 on our by name list and holding strong. As I said, many of those have vouchers. Of those 32, I guarantee you 18 of them have HUD-VASH, which is like a Section 8 voucher for veterans in hand. They're just looking for places, somebody that will rent to them. And then on July 6, 2023, this is what's really cool to me, a joint announcement between the city, the county, the VA, and United Way, everybody coming together saying, we're all in this together, we're going to end veteran homelessness, right? And so that's really excited about that. Some of the core competencies of the COC, this is kind of what makes up the framework. We have homeless prevention and shelter collaboration, which I've talked some about. But we also have, at the United Way, we have a team. When I first started, there was about 3 of them. We're up to 8 now. We manage the entire community's database for homelessness. So anybody that enters a shelter, they enter outreach services, they go to the day shelter. All of those staff are putting data into this central database called the Homeless Management Information System, and we're able to share data among each other. So if someone goes into shelter at Humankind Ministries, and then they leave, something happens, but then they show up over at Open Door, you know, those staff are able to communicate with one another to best meet the needs of the person being served. We also have housing navigation, and then of course grant compliance and system coordination.
Question.
Yes, ma'am.
In the core, I do not see job training, job placement. I volunteered at youth with homeless for about 11 years. And I'm concerned that sometimes I think when I pass by them on the street, it might be easier to get a job than standing in the heat asking for a free handout. So what about job training and job placement for those people who are able-bodied, and many of them appear to be?
Yes, we have a partnership with the workforce. They're part of our.
I didn't see it in the shelter and all that, in the core values.
All there.
Yeah.
They're all part of our the continuum as well. There's also a program called Seeds for Success that's with Catholic Charities that we work with a lot. It's there. To be truthful, a lot of the challenge that we have with homeless individuals and families is getting them document ready. So many of them don't have identification, they don't have a birth certificate, social security card, those kinds of things. So we're starting kind of from a negative place, if you will, because they're not ready for employment because they don't even have the legal documents that would get them a job. We are a housing first community, so we try to focus on addressing the most important need, which is the housing piece. And then once someone is housed, providing those wraparound services, continuing to work with them, because as you know, ordering a birth certificate, if they're from Kansas, it might take 30 days, but if they're from California, it might take 3 months. And so go ahead and addressing the most pressing need, which is the housing piece, and providing the rental supports for them while they're in housing. But then as they get the birth certificate, now we can get the social security card, we can get the ID, now we can look for, we can get that job. But as I mentioned, it takes us walking alongside them throughout all of this. When our system's not working well is when we start getting siloed. You know, I'm Humankind, just as an example, or I'm Rescue Mission. And somebody comes to me for shelter, I work with them, I get them housed, and I'm like, all right, cool, next client, right? Next person, because they're housed, right? We've done our job, we got them housed. But there has to be somebody that, and we find it difficult to then look for somebody else to come in because we have a relationship with them. And so it's better for us to walk alongside them to see that through. And a lot of that involves a system change, which is where we're at now. We're trying to change how we're doing things so that we can have better success with people.
How easy is it to get a job if you don't have an address or a home?
It's extremely difficult. And this, what I'm saying about our system changed. Many of our shelters also operate this way in terms of people come in at 6 o'clock at night and then at 7 in the morning, go out, you're out, right? Go out and find a job. Go out and find housing. So now we're asking people to just wander around, right, downtown, looking for a house and a job. And we know that that's not the way that things work in the 21st century anymore, right? More people are doing stuff online. Plus, it's 100 degrees outside. You're gonna walk in sweating, I'm here to fill out a job application. Like that's not gonna, I mean, it works sometimes, but I mean, the success rate's gonna be in the lower end for sure. So it's a change. I mean, it's a change in system, and you'll hear these conversations. I mean, the city is looking at trying to acquire kind of a navigation center, a one-stop shop for people experiencing homelessness. We're looking at doing different things. We're sending out more coordination teams. We're definitely in a state of evolution as far as our system is concerned. But we're starting to see more success. I will say that we're not there as a slide will come up that I'll show you. But some of the things that we are doing well is that of the people that go into housing, we're only seeing about a 10% return to homelessness. And that's phenomenal numbers, across the board. Because you would think, without these things, people would end up homeless again. So, that being said, we managed, like I said, the database and housing navigation. I want to kind of hit on this slide because when I started, we had what's called a COC housing navigator, and this person was tasked with managing that by name list. It was a spreadsheet. And so a shelter provider would send over and say, I want to add these 5 people to the by name list, and they would add them to the list and they manually would take them off and that kind of thing. There was only about 100 people on it. In order to get into housing resources, you had to be on the list, but there was only a small fraction of people that were on the list. And this is really where some of the innovation began to come into place. We moved everything to digitally. So we already have the homeless management information system. There's a whole module in there about by name list management. So as we put people into the system saying we've identified this person as homeless, we also are then putting them on the list. So our number grew to like almost 500 is where it's at today. But we're able to sort it by population. If it's a veteran, we can sort out everybody else. We just look at the veterans. We can sort it by age. We can sort it by gender. We can sort it by disabling conditions. If they have they have those disabling conditions, they're not chronic. We can do all of that kind of thing. We also, that's whenever our housing navigator moved from more of a kind of a distance, kind of a remote role to more of an upfront and a direct service type role. She started holding weekly case conferencing meetings where we would bring a host of providers. I wish y'all could see it. There'll be as many people as are in this room in our weekly case conferencing meetings. We have law enforcement, there's city housing, we have ComCare, Mental Health Association. I mean, anybody that's working with clients, with all of our street outreach providers, and we come together and we'll pull up people on a screen like this. And we're like, hey, we got Jim Smith here, and ComCare's, yeah, we're working with them on this. And then the next person says they're working with them on that. And it's really a great coordinated effort. And we have a bell and we ring the bell regularly and we house people. And like this last week, we have people that we've been working with for years that people have not been able to reach them. And we're starting to ring the bell because they're going into housing. And so it's really exciting. We've also increased the number of housing navigators that we have. We started with 1. Now she's our lead housing navigator. And we brought on 2 more housing navigators, one specifically focused on the hard to serve population, those people that have extreme mental health, extreme substance use issues, that have been through most of the housing programs that there are and have failed them. like have been evicted, have still ended up back on the street. She also takes referrals directly from the state hospital. So people that are being exited from the state hospital, nursing facilities for mental health, jails, they're all going on to her caseload. And she's working with them to try to get them housed directly from those locations. And then we added a domestic violence housing navigator too, someone to navigate people that are experiencing human trafficking, domestic violence, sexual assault, and those kinds of things.
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
So you mentioned that you had 49, well, now 32 homeless vets in your system. Do you have the information broken down into age, sex, race, or their families are single?
I can get that information. I don't have it like readily available. We are seeing aging, more older vets. There's some women on there here, there, but if I can give you my card, you can email me, I can get you that information. All right, so this is kind of what our system looks like now. It's an ever evolving process, but like I said, you have access points. So somebody's experiencing homelessness. A lot of times we find them, either they've entered a shelter, they've been discovered through outreach, or they've called 211. Then we assess them. And so as we do outreach or as they come into shelter, a case manager and outreach worker will do a barriers assessment, score, which you see kind of here at the bottom. But from that assessment, we've developed prioritization. And so our current prioritization for housing is veterans. Actually, it's chronically homeless is number 1. Veterans is number 2. Then it's over 65. Then it's youth. Then it's people with domestic violence. Then it's families, and then it's everybody else. So we've kind of got a tier, and it's all based off of like vulnerability. Like someone who is over 65 is more likely to have something bad happen to them, like to die on the street, than maybe, just a single man. And so we prioritize it accordingly. As I mentioned about the veterans, we are also working on chronic homelessness on the kind of backside because it is so kind of challenging. We have like 33 chronically homeless on our list, but I know that that's not an accurate number. I know that there are more. In order to be considered chronically homeless, you have to have a year or more of ongoing homelessness. It can be in 3 or more episodes, or it can be continuous, but it has to add up to 12 months. And we see people coming in and out of our system. And so they come in the wintertime and we've captured them, they go on our list, and then they disappear in the summertime and we can't find them. So, yes, sir.
I have a question. What are you doing to help kids that's coming out of the foster care system? 18 years old, you got any programs out there for them?
We do. There's a Crossroads shelter, street outreach services through the children's home, but we also have what we call foster youth initiative vouchers, and they're like Section 8 vouchers. We currently have 13 of them. We would like to expand it to get 10 more. The referrals have to come from DCF, but our system is set up to where if someone say they show up at Crossroads Youth Shelter and they identify that they've aged out of foster care, then they would contact DCF, who will make the referral and get the voucher for them, and then we have to provide the case management. Yes, sir.
Are those the same vouchers for foster kid age outs that the city of Wichita has also?
That's them.
That's
Yes,
the one. Okay.
those are them.
The challenge is the DCF is not getting the names to them quick enough.
They're
So
not.
I've seen some data in the foster care system, something I've been involved in about 7 years. 1 out of 5 children that age out of the foster care system will end up homelessness within 3 years. Will end up homeless or unsheltered in 3 years. 1 out of 5. I mean, it's a moral failure.
It is a moral failure. We we had a homeless task force meeting, and they had 2 youth that early 20s got out. One from Wichita, foster care, got dropped off in Topeka. Just there you go, casting them out to the ocean to sink or swim. But yeah, right now the referrals that are coming in are people that are in foster care. Maybe they're 18 or over, but they're the ones that DCF is having problems with. So they're like not compliant. They're not wanting to do the things they're supposed to do. And DCF is using it as an off ramp. Like, hey, we'll put them on this voucher, then we can exit them from care, and it'll be someone else's issue to deal with. And that's not going to help the kids be successful.
Now, I have a question. You say y'all give them like vouchers and stuff for housing. But are y'all communicating with these apartments and these landlords with these vouchers? Because you have a lot of places now in the past 2 or 3 years that don't even want to be bothered with Section 8 or HUD. They don't want the people in their property. That's why they're raising the rent so high, because they don't want them. And they're sending a lot of outside of Wichita to find places to live where them people is starting to reject them. So how was that working? Cause I know a young lady that just got a Section 8 apartment. And after she moved in it and signed her lease, they told her she can't smoke cigarettes on their property. She can't, if they walk past the door, even if it's not her and somebody done smoked a cigarette, they're automatically evicted. And you got places that have restrictions that some of these people can't even live up to.
Yes, and that sum is bigger than, that's a bigger question because we do have corporations, LLCs that are purchasing properties that used to take vouchers that are now saying they won't take vouchers. But there is a piece that we can navigate. We have a landlord landlord engagement team, a whole subcommittee that's their whole goal. They meet monthly and they invite landlords. We really are trying to do more incentives, like with saying like, hey, if you will take a chance on this higher risk person, you know, we can add an extra deposit, or we could provide guarantees, like if it's not working out, like we will move them and then we will find somebody to fill the unit, or we'll repair any damages that have come as a result. But what I found with landlord navigation is it is all about the relationship, right? We cannot be a hands-off system to where we're saying, here's a list of people that take Section 8, go find a unit, let me know when you find one. Like, because we're asking again, we're sending them out at 7 o'clock in the morning to go find a unit. Like, that's not the way it works. Like, as an advocate, as a case manager, it's incumbent upon me to pick up that phone and say, hi, Mr. Jones, my name is Matt Lowe. I work with United Way of Plains. And I understand you had a meeting with my client, Jim Smith, right? And I'm working with him. We're trying to get him into housing and giving that landlord the assurances that I'm going to be there. If you have any problems at all, you pick up the phone and you call me and I'll be there. But then we got to back up that promise, right? Whenever we say we're going to do it, we have to do it. And, you know, I'm glad to say that our housing navigators do that. We're sending out thank you cards and gift baskets, and we're doing all these things to try to build relationships with landlords. And I know that there are also public pleas from the city. When we held our public announcement on July the 6th, there was that plea. We need more landlords, and that is a fact. We need more landlords.
And in addition to what he said, so it's gonna take that effort, because like Matt mentioned, there's a number of companies that are basically saying, we don't want the voucher. We don't want what comes with it, which is those different inspections, those different expectations from people. And they just would rather not have it. And that's been our bigger problem. And I believe on top, I know of 8 complexes, so that's probably over 3,000 units that they won't take those vouchers. And that's a problem. And a lot of the local landlords you probably can build that relationship with, but those out-of-state companies, they don't care. They're just not gonna take it. And if we're calling, I know Matt's been calling, and sometimes you have to go through 3 or 4 LLCs to get to whoever actually owns it. It's just tough to deal with. There are some things we can do and probably will do, and it will upset some of those folks, and we'll probably have the accusation of the big hand of government. But we sit back and we continue to watch people not being able to get housed, and we have the voucher, and that's hurting our economy, that's hurting their lives, it's not giving them a fair chance to live their American dream. So something has to give at some point. So we definitely continue to try to build those relationships, but at some point we're gonna have to force people to take those vouchers. And that we've been trying not to do that. That's probably gonna happen here pretty soon.
So to piggyback on what she says, I'm a neighborhood person too. And and I believe in homeless, but I believe in responsibility. And unless somebody trains these people that you need to have trash containers, you need to cut your yard. The goal should not be permanent housing, but sustainability. So they'll know how to live as a neighbor in the neighborhood. So the social workers, what are they doing? So that's why it's so important that they have a part-time job, a volunteer job, something to show their responsibility instead of a free handout.
I would agree. There's a tier though, when you look at homelessness. I mean, you have people that are situationally homeless, that maybe have a lot more of these skills, but the longer that you're out on the street, the longer that you're homeless, the further away from like
reality.
regular society you get. And so whenever, you see people, they've got the shopping cart and they're dragging one in the front and the back, and they've got all of the stuff that they're hoarding, and they put out their tent, and there's just, trash everywhere. It's like, this is how they've learned to live, and they didn't get there overnight. And so they're not gonna get back to a regular, functioning member of society overnight either. It's gonna take time. Yes, I agree. Case management is so, so, so important, and we can't just put people in housing and walk away. Housing first is a philosophy, but it's not housing only. It's meant to be housing first, and so we can get you into housing, and then we're gonna walk with you and support you. A lot of what Councilman Johnson's talking about in regards to our housing, it's been a seller's market for a while, right? To where you can sell a house. Like I sold a house not 2 years back, and what I paid for it, I sold it for almost twice what I paid for it, right? So you can sell a house for a lot of money right now. So what that means is that if I go to buy a house, I'm also gonna be paying a lot more for this. So we see people that have sold their homes, and they're bank accounting that money, and they're renting, right? And they can afford to pay, they can afford to go to all these units where they've now evicted such and such, raised the rent by $100, and like they can afford to go in and rent it. And so they're sitting in rentals that would normally be occupied by other people. And it's just a trickle down effect. So now that next layer of the socioeconomic ladder don't have as many places. So now they're having to go to a lower tier, which pushes those people down lower. And so now you get down to the lowest rung, if you will, of the slumlord type housing, and the people that might rent those are now all just being pushed out on the street. All the lower income housing, everybody's just being pushed out to the street. And so that's where we're having the housing crisis sits within our community. I thank God every day that we're not like some communities, because if you go to the coast, it is crazy town. I mean, like they have homeless people out there years because they cannot, with the minimum wage and with the cost of, the wages that they're paying people and the amount that they're charging for housing, they don't match up, right? And even in Sedgwick County, you need to make a certain amount of money to be able to rent a $600 unit, if you will, and be able to support your family. So it is a system-wide, community-wide effort, which is why I'm so thrilled to be here with Councilman Johnson and Commissioner Beatty and seeing us all working all this together, right? So that we can hopefully create a better system for all of our neighbors.
And I have another question. What is the city doing with all of these houses and all of this property that they have? That's all boarded up. They're not doing nothing with it, especially right there off of 26th and Hyatt and all of them. And then you go downtown off of Central and all, and you see all of these boarded up buildings and all of that. What's wrong with the city or the state of Kansas or somebody trying to open up some of them places for people to live? Because that's just, you see the people sitting on the steps of the buildings in the day. And if you go through there let's say like 4 or 5 o'clock in the evening, you see them sleeping on the porches or on the steps right there in front of the buildings. So why not just open up some of them buildings?
So that's more of my question. And the easy answer for the downtown is that's private property. We have no control over that. So whoever owns that building can open it up or not. But also a lot of those buildings need a lot of renovation inside, and they're in danger. There's one right now I had a complaint on Facebook about. After looking into it, it's been vacant since 2009. It has asbestos issues, so none of our first responders should be in there, and they're not going in there. An order from the chief said, don't go in there because it's a danger to them. And the city has been reaching out to that property owner to, one, board up their building, and two, get all those issues fixed. But some of that is, again, your out-of-state property owner that's not taking care of that. So that's the private property piece. The housing piece we've been talking about since 2019. So in short, because it's a long story, we had a plan to renovate all of our public housing, 352 units. It got approved by council. We had a developer out of Philadelphia that was going to do it. And then the pandemic happened. And then we lost some of the funding to do it. That person lost some funding, and then HUD said that plan wouldn't work, even though we knew it could. It's our city. HUD then rejected that, so we had to go back with the second plan. That plan got rejected. Then we hired Sally Stang. Sally Stang came up with some really good suggestions. She had to work through probably another 2 variations of a plan to where we are now. So those houses are being sold off. They go out for RFP. Developers or individuals can try to bid on those. And the goal is to get it renovated, because a lot of those aren't up to snuff. So the ones over by Gordon Parks, a lot of those need to be fixed. Some of them are occupied. I think 5 or 6 are occupied. Most of them, we were gonna strip them down to the frame and rebuild them. That's what they really need. So they're going out for RFP. I believe the first 3 phases have went out, which is those. Some houses in District 3, I forgot the neighborhood because I'm not in District 3, and some houses in District 5 went out for bid. The ones in District 5 are newer, and we're hoping to make those rentals. We still have much more. If you go down 17th Street, those are in the floodplain. I don't think we put those out yet. The ones on Murdoch are in the floodplain. We haven't put those out yet. And that's just because with that being in the floodplain, in order to do any type of work, you have to raise everything 2 feet. It's super expensive and really gonna cost more than what that house is worth right now. But our goal is to get each one of those units into the hands of a family that can own it or rent it and make sure it's renovated so that neighbors don't have to deal with the blight that they see right now. That's just taking a long time and we have to jump through federal hurdles. It's not something that the council can do. We all agree, let's make it happen. We voted on it. We're keep saying, let's make it happen. But Sally has to keep jumping through those federal hurdles. That's the only reason they're not occupied right now, but we're pushing as hard as we can on that. I think council is looking at another set of houses that we'll vote on pretty soon as well. So anyone who lived in there can bid on it. You don't have to bid on all 43 like over Gordon Park. You can say you want 1, you want 2, you want 5, whatever that is. And then you have to demonstrate an ability to be able to renovate those. That was important to me because I hear from every neighborhood association president about how ugly some of these houses can be and how it impacts their other property values. So for me, it was, we need somebody who actually has the capacity to renovate it and get a family in there, because that's how you improve your neighborhoods.
You all have done as a city more than I have seen done in the last 10 years, and I applaud you for that.
You mentioned something about those properties in the floodplain, and he mentioned something about sink or swim when those tie together.
Brandon, I have a question. Can you explain what the RFP is?
Yeah, RFP is a request for proposal, so they'll put out, and I didn't read it, so just again, in transparency, I have a conflict of interest. My wife is the director of Habitat for Humanity, so I stay out of most housing conversations now. I used to be deep into that, so I can't give every detail of all of that, I just get updates. But in general, what I know of the RFP is, let's use this area. It'll be a request for proposal to say, we've got 43 houses. Are you interested in any of those? So you'll say 1 or all 43 or 5, whatever your number is. Then it will ask you specific questions of your ability, your history, your experience, your financial capabilities to be able to not only acquire that, because those are selling at market rate, but also to renovate it, what that timeline will look like. If this is your first housing project, it's probably gonna be a little harder to get that if someone's done 2 or 3, or some of these organizations that might have done 20 or 50, because they know how to do that. They have those resources, they have those employees. And then once you demonstrate all of that on paper, you'll give your, whatever the requirement is, insurance bonding, whatever that might be, you submit that to the city as, this is my bid, this is how much I'll pay, this is how much it's gonna cost me to renovate. If you want the grant, because there's a $5 million grant to the gap in there. So your gap right now basically means it will probably cost you $150 or so to renovate that house or build a house. And if you want to keep that affordable, meaning sell it less than that, there's some gap financing that'll cover some of those costs for you. You have to demonstrate how you use that gap. And then our housing team will evaluate all of that. You may get some calls back to see if these numbers are accurate, check some of your experiences, if you have references, and then they'll decide who wins those. There's a housing committee that does that. That committee then makes a recommendation to the council on disposing of those. Disposing means selling those off. But it's a long, detailed process, but our housing team will also walk you through it if you're interested.
Very good. I think we're about to wrap up here. So there is work to be done. We just started this kind of housing navigation deal this year. We did set some goals for ourselves that we would assess 70% of households who access the homeless service system. We're currently at 49%. We would individually case conference 50% of those that have been assessed and put on the bond name list. We're currently at 31%. And then we would move 40% of people in our coordinated entry system into permanent housing. We're currently at 29%. So we've got some work to do. We are, 8 months into this. And like I said, we've recently in the last 3 months or so we've gone from 1 housing navigator to 3. We do have funding to add a peer support specialist, which is, in my mind, an answer to her question here. We're seeing a lot of success with peer support. And that is somebody with lived experience who then can come in and walk alongside people. They know what it's like to be homeless. They have navigated the system and they're now, stably housed. And so they can then provide that support, much like, a 12-step kind of thing. The city has, I know that they've added, I feel like you have about 2 care coordination teams with one of them's a Project Hope and one of them's another called care coordination, but they're kind of taking that same model where you have a housing navigator, you have peer support, they're tag teaming it, working together, and they're seeing a lot of success with getting people housed as well. So we hope to see those numbers go up, but as the picture says there's definitely work to be done. This is just about grant compliance, and this is kind of our grant that we get every year, $2.7 million, and how it's broke up. And kind of in summarizing, in 2022, we identified 690 unhoused persons during the point in time count. The number was up to 702 in 2023, so we had a slight increase. I will say that looking at numbers around the country, I'm thankful for that small increase because we're seeing numbers jump. I mean, post-pandemic, they're just soaring up in the thousands. And so in comparison, Topeka, they have like 420. And if you compare Wichita, Sedgwick County to, Shawnee County, like we are 3-4 times their population. They've got more than half the homeless numbers that we do. So we've served 3,000 people last year through the emergency shelter and transitional housing, street outreach and housing services. We housed or kept 1,000 of them, and we've provided 107,000 instances of services to people experiencing homelessness. So you'll see that the graph there, over 50% goes to rental assistance. Supportive services would be like case management. There is some operating cost, admin. The cost of the database is not cheap. So that's kind of where we're at. And that's essentially the end of the presentation. I will say, as I started out, that homelessness is a community problem. It's going to take us as a community all working together to solve it. I have firmly embedded in the notion that homelessness does not discriminate against any of us. People that are experiencing homelessness are our neighbors. There are, kids that go to school with our children. They go to church with them. I mean, any of us can experience homelessness at any time, right? It can happen to any of us. It can happen to our family members. I believe compassion is the way to go. Yes, we need the life skills and we need to come around people, but I believe very much in an incarnational approach. I am a man of faith, and I'm here in the United Way. That sense of walking alongside people as they're going through the struggle. We can't just hand somebody and say, "Here, go pull yourself up by your bootstraps. Go find a job. Stop using drugs." Those are all great. If they worked, we wouldn't have homelessness, right? If those worked, we wouldn't have any of our issues. Just quit. If you could just quit using heroin. Like nobody woke up. I remember there used to be a commercial when I was a kid, and it had like, this person, and it was kind of in that area and it had the eggs and the frying pan, and this is your brain, and this is your brain on drugs. They had one where there was this lady and she was strung out. And it talked about nobody wakes up one day and decides, I think I would just like to be a junkie and maybe go live out on the street for a few years, right? Like, who does that, right? It happens one decision at a time and one traumatic event at a time. And that can happen to any of us. And so I just want to encourage us all to come around and support those who are going through that. Any questions, any other questions that have come up as I share? Councilman Johnson.
Great. So if someone was about to be unhoused and they hear about continuum of care, what's your
They should call 211. I do have cards out there. If you have any issues with that, I would say call 211. You can reach out to a member of the homeless outreach team. The city of Wichita has, I believe, 4 officers that they are police officers, but they are not police officers like you think of. They are like social workers at heart. And so they go out, they don't just immediately start running for warrants. They're not trying to detain, take people, put them in jail. They're trying to get them connected to services. They house people all the time straight from the street. They drive trucks for a reason, because they will move people into housing off of the street. And our jail is already overfilled. I know of a guy right now that I received a call from Via Christi St. Joe. He was in the psych unit at St. Joe. He was homeless, and they were like, hey, what's his next steps? I looked him up in our little homeless information system, saw that he was there, saw that he was chronically homeless, had been in our system for a while. Myself and our mental health housing navigator went out, we assessed him. There was immediate openings at the Mental Health Association. And so they have master lease on units, so the apartments are already there. All they had to do was move him in. We got him moved in, and he subsequently disabled the stove and created like kind of a concern. And so somehow the police were called, he was arrested. He's now sitting in our county jail with a $300 bond. $300 is all it takes. He's just sitting in jail, just sitting there. Mental Health Association, being the great organization that they are, have said, as soon as he's released from jail, he can come back to housing. We're just gonna take out the stove. He's gonna have a microwave for a while until we can get him, because that's what it's all about. Like she said, it's about walking alongside and baby stepping this thing until we can get him back to where he's able to function.
Is there a program designed to help them get out? Yeah, like, cause you just said he has a $300 bond. Wouldn't it be easier to just get him out?
Thank you. And I'm all like, can he earn like every day, like take off $20 off of it? That would be more question for Commissioner Bailey.
There isn't right now. It would not a structured government program, and a lot of it is, the sheriff's an elected official who runs the jail, but there are some nonprofits and some churches that'll try to do some bonding and things of that sort. The challenge is when they walk out of jail, they're being released 24 hours a day. Challenge is many times when they walk out of the jail, there's nowhere to go. They run into incredible barriers the second they walk out of jail. So this is why wraparound services are incredibly important. There are some people, Matt gave you an example. I'll give you an example from the other side of that coin. We had it in my district just last week. We had an individual that wanted to go to jail because they'd been homeless and didn't want to go to a shelter, didn't feel safe at the shelter. They actually said they felt safer at the Sedgwick County Jail. They walked in and said, will you call the police to a business? The business said, I'm sorry, I'm not calling the police. They walked outside, threw a brick through a car window, and then walked and said, now will you call the police? I want to go to the jail. What that's symbolic of is the lack of services that are available in our community right now. We just simply don't have enough services to treat people and to serve people. We've got to be better.
Anything else for me? Thank y'all so much.
Appreciate Matt coming out and talking about the work that they all are doing. I have been on council almost 6 years. Didn't know that thing. That's sad. Anyway, thank you, Matt, for being conscious. I didn't think it did it, but thank you for being here, Matt. Wonderful presentation, but also highlighted many of the gaps that we have in the work that we have going on forward. I mean, even that $300 bond story. I mean, we've talked about. I haven't talked to Brian about it yet, but just cash bail was that really some poor decision or something happens, then really it's $200-300 keeping them in jail away from work. If they have a job and trying to fix whatever they did, that just becomes a problem. And yes, they did something, but also it just has so many ripple effects when that happens. Through Matt's conversation, it reminded me, so a few of us just went city to city. I try to go every year, and there's things that we experience. Commissioners Lopez and Dennis and Meitzner were on that trip as well. We went to a place called Springs Rescue Mission. And some of what we talked about today, they're actually working on. They had a campus to where, yes, at 7 a.m., 8 a.m., you get pushed out, but you get pushed out of a building onto the campus. You still hang out. There are computers there. There's washing machines, there's dryers. There's opportunities to have someone come out and support you. And that was a bigger, larger project. And that's something that the county's been talking about as well, with what the campus could look like, how everything could work together with continuum of care, how people can get services. It's something that I hope that we'll get to soon. I know there's a few more hurdles that we have to work through, but that Springs Rescue Mission was pretty inspirational to see what all of the work that's actually happening right now will look like when it gets done. A lot of folks bring up Haven of Hope in San Antonio, and that's something, I was on that city to city trip with Commissioner Dennis and Commissioner Cruz at the time, I won't say it again. But I mean, there was a lot of good things happening. One big thing they had down there was a billionaire that wanted to help out fund that, so we're finding our money the hard way. But if there are any billionaires watching on social media, we'd love to have $100 million to help. But we're working through all of those things, and there just continues to be gaps. I mean, you know, we all have examples. There's someone that I've been talking to, and I think our service providers know, but they were using city resources before, federal resources, rewrap. Well, there's a clause in there, if you use rewrap, you can't keep any more services for a certain amount of time. So they exhausted all of their services and then are relying upon partners that don't have any touch point with those federal funds. And I'm starting to see more of those folks who are now getting evicted during the pandemic. So there's a lot of gaps there, but there's a lot of good things happening. And I think with all these heads coming together, we're seeing more collaboration. We'll find ways to fix those gaps and try to, again, walk people through the process. One of the comments earlier about tenants, we actually have been working with a couple of different groups on tenant landlord workshops. And in those, rather than just telling tenants their rights, which is really important, but also having landlords work with tenants to learn what does it mean to be a good tenant? What are some things a tenant can do in the apartment that you're okay with, whether it's patching something in the wall or, you know, if it's in the garbage disposal, things like that, that yes, the landlord should have ongoing communication with the tenant, but also teaches them how to take care of stuff. And then also you learn what you can and cannot do in the city. There's so many people that don't know you can't park on the grass at your own house. You can't. It's against ordinance, but people do it all the time.
Amen.
So, you know, those are things that we want to teach people, and we do it through pilot programs. We do it here. I make those comments from time to time, but also telling folks in those workshops, because if you're renting, that's not your property. If you're parking on the grass, you're killing the grass. Again, it's against city ordinance. It could be an eyesore in the neighborhood, but just working through that, trying to have everybody collaborate. So there are things going on to try to support those. I will try to give my updates really quickly. First, I want to thank Tracy the Flavor for the good breakfast this morning. Have been doing our breakfast now for 2 months, so keep her here. Food is delicious. I see a lot of smiling faces as people bite into it. Few upcoming things. I went to the Evergy rate hike meeting. Councilmember Fry and Mayor Woods were there as well. There was a comment made early on that city government, as well as county government, other layers of government could submit comment to the request for a rate hike. Tuesday, I requested our team start working on a response to that. I have not heard anyone in support of a rate hike. If you are, please raise your hand. All right, still no one. So I've asked them to look at it. Councilmember Fry and Mayor Woods all supported that, so hopefully we'll have that ready soon. Council will vote on the resolution outlining a number of reasons as to why we oppose that rate hike. And then we'll submit that to Evergy or the KCC as well. Tentative date for those along the Redbud Trail. Yeah, September 26th is a tentative date for the 30% Evergy meeting. That should be confirmed this week, and then letters will go out. I don't have a location yet. I think it'll be at the Metroplex. I don't have the time yet, but just keep that date in mind. We had our evening budget meeting. For everyone's neighborhood, I was able to get to before that, and anyone who's been to the breakfast, we had about 20 speakers. And I've told every neighborhood, we only get between 10 and 20. So if you care about the budget and there's something you really want to see, that's the meeting to go to. Again, about 20 people. I've heard from more than 20 people who had things they wanted to talk about in the budget, and none of them were at that meeting. But that was our evening meeting. Most of that conversation was about funding Cowtown. So again, when I've tried to highlight, we have these budget opportunities. Please come talk to us. Our final budget hearing is August 22nd. Council has moved that from a consent agenda or consent meeting to a full council meeting where we will adopt the budget. If there are changes you would like to see, it's really difficult now because we're in the last couple weeks of that, but please still come, let us know. You'll hear that final budget meeting. But again, every year we've committed to an evening budget meeting. So to hear from you about your priorities and what you think. But that has occurred. We talked about neighborhood night out again next Tuesday. If your neighborhood is doing something, please be there. You'll be there at some point. At this point, I think there's 10 of us that will be saying hello. The chief will be with us for a while, and he's gonna go to the other districts to talk to people as well. One cool announcement is HopeNet has a program called Getting Ahead. It's powerful. If you've ever known anyone that's been through that program, definitely ask them about it. I had the honor, honestly, to attend the event last winter, the graduation ceremony, and we heard so many powerful stories. Some of the folks have probably been through some of our programs to help out and just how they have come out ahead. A lot of that was moving. There was even one person that said she didn't want to participate. She didn't like none of those folks. And it took somebody reaching out to her again, and then she went through and she graduated. She's doing well. She's a wonderful example for her daughter and the work that she's doing. It is faith-based. You can see how powerful God is in that space. Just all the stories. I'm gonna try to go back every year now. It's just really fulfilling to see how that's working out. But the announcement is now Getting Ahead will be at Atwater. So I'm excited about that. I should help lead that effort. I was able to go that last Friday. Tasha made me do it, even though she was the one that really helped all of that. But I was able to go take pictures with the two entities that paid for it. So Equity Bank and the other organization, the one lady was with, but it's real quick. I walked in and they had the big checks. Really excited. So I'm excited to see Getting Ahead here at Atwater, especially here being a resource center that it is, everything that touches Atwater. So that will be here. I don't know when that's starting.
This 21st, and there's some brochures at the front, at the signing table.
Talking all over. August 21st. So excited about that. And then just a couple council highlights for the last couple weeks. We did have a new ordinance about the party buses. So WPD asked us to look into that. There have been some challenges with some party buses. There's a new ordinance that gives them a little more oversight over that, making sure that they have a license. So before they didn't, you just operated. Now you have to have a license, which means if you don't do the things you're supposed to, that license can then be suspended. I did ask about people who may not know about that, because there are probably a few just individually owned party bus or entertainment bus, people who may not hear that. So there is some grace in there that didn't know about it. We'll tell you, you won't be telling about it immediately. We designated the piece of land on McLean Boulevard that was proposed at one point to have houses as a new park in District 6. We have a loan approved, our state revolving loan fund with the wastewater treatment plant upgrades. That's something Vice Mayor Hoheisel is really excited about because of his efforts with a couple other council members. That smell that's in South Wichita will go away. 98% of it will go away once this work gets done. So he's really excited about that. That was something he continued to talk about, and now something's being done about it. So happy about that. We renewed our lawn care rebate program. We've been talking more about, we're still in phase 1 of the drought. So we've been talking more about using grasses and plants that don't take as much water. So you don't have to water as much. But today, you don't have to water at all. We received a clean independent audit for the 2022 annual comprehensive financial report. You may have heard a lot of people, or a few people, one candidate for mayor, saying that we were really bad financially in our budget and we didn't do things the right way. We continue to receive clean independent audits from our budget and the work that our finance staff does. So excited to see that. We approved the design and budget increase for the Carl Brewer Center. Hope you all saw that. Really excited about it. Again, it's going to be 3 times the size it is now. The way the layout is amazing. We've started talking about what that artwork is going to look like inside. I think it's going to blow people away. Just from the conversations we've had, we haven't what people saw was the base of the center. That was without any of the artwork that's gonna be in there. Mrs. Brewer, we talked with her a couple times. I'm excited about what all she has offered to add to it. I won't say it because I want people to be surprised, but I think people are really gonna love this facility. We will break ground as soon as FEMA says yes to the revision of the floodplain. That's what's dragged this thing out. I was hoping we'd see structures and stuff going vertical by now, but we're waiting on FEMA. It's sounding pretty good, but that'll be the next step in the process. Once they say yes, to start moving towards getting in the ground. Council's approved pretty much everything to get started. So just waiting on that. We approved the budget to begin site selection for 2 new fire stations in West Wichita. I haven't talked about it in a while, but that's been my biggest concern with our fire coverage in the city is West Wichita and Southwest Wichita. So we're gonna have 2 new stations out there. That's gonna be good for that community as well. And we just did a new ordinance for impounding vehicles involved in human trafficking, targeted at the individual buying. So oftentimes for the years, the women who were forced into trafficking or had some pimp that was treating them a certain way, making them go out there, the focus was always the women. That was the person buying sex. And if you are caught in the act or trying to get to the act of it, your vehicle can be impounded. So if someone comes home without a vehicle for 72 hours, the second time is 20 days. So hopefully that does something. We've heard from WPD and a number of organizations that will make an impact. That actually came from, I believe Oklahoma City has that. So we approved that. We also approved the MOU for the downtown medical campus, the biomedical campus. I was excited about that. Everybody kept asking me where it was going. I always wanted to smile and say District 1. Couldn't. Now I can. We know it'll be in District 1. So District 1, if any of my colleagues are watching, cover your ears, but continues to be the best district in the city of Wichita. So we did that. Finally, we approved IRBs for Spirit out there. They're going to build a new building. They continue to grow and expand. And I asked the question because we haven't did an RIB in a while. So no, we're not spending $60 million. Spirit is spending $60 million. They just get a property tax break with a sales tax break. So those are my updates. Are there any questions for me?
Where is the building gonna be located, the Spirit?
So it's on the Spirit property. I think it's on the north side of the campus right now. I have to go back and look at the map, but it's still out there in the same area.
31st Street, Oliver, that ain't.
What now?
31st Street in Oliver, that's where it's going in.
31st and Oliver.
You're down the way from the
Thank you.
No, it's going south of the current campus in those fields that are closer to 47 on the east side of Oliver.
Yes. I was thinking about it. Yes, you're right.
47th Street. Okay, thanks for the feedback.
Mr. Thompson.
I know in the past, when it comes down to rezoning, people then feeling if we usually get notified of the rezoning status. I thought it was also a practice to notify the neighborhood association president, situations like that.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. It's supposed to be. It is. We have to make sure we have accurate data on who that is and where to send it. That is supposed to happen. But I'm also glad you brought that up because we just had a workshop on that. And as many of you may know, I've been pushing for extending that beyond 200 feet. So we finally had the workshop to take my suggestion of 1,000 and cutting that in half to 500. So council didn't give a whole lot of direction other than me, the vice mayor, and I believe the mayor wanted to, I think Councilmember Ballard also said we really wanted to go push forward with seeing this a little more. So I backed off of 1,000 because the cost to the applicant is like really expensive depending on the neighborhood. I mean, right now, they might pay $180 to notify folks and that jumped to like 7,000. So I didn't think that was completely fair, but I did think 500 was. So that would jump them maybe another $800 or $900, but those decisions impact neighborhoods for decades to come, maybe forever. So we talked about that. We talked about making sure neighborhood presidents and neighborhoods knew about it. And then we also talked about simplifying the letter from the, I think it's 2 pages now, to 1 page, really broken down where you understand it, and then multiple languages. Anybody who doesn't speak English right now is kind of left out, and if they can't read it. So we suggested, I suggested English on the front, Spanish on the back, Vietnamese on the 2nd page, and then whatever the 4th top language is in the county on the back of that page. We'll see where that goes. We had the workshop, we gave those suggestions. We'll see if it comes back in the workshop or if it comes to council. But neighborhood presidents should be notified about that. If there are situations where there is no neighborhood president, then it's probably just gonna fall to that 200 to 500 feet. Per state statute, the 200 feet is the, I hate to say it like this, the legitimate protest. That's what they actually count towards what will change a potential council vote total. But to me, that entire map is still important, because if you see, you know, maybe 7 properties within that 200 feet don't like it, but the entirety of the area around it doesn't want it, that still means something to me, even if it may not legally count. And that's been some of that conversation. So we just had that workshop. I'm hoping that it comes up. The neighborhood presidents are currently supposed to be notified.
When, do you have any idea?
When it will come back,
No, when presidents of the neighborhood association will be notified.
when all of the letters go out, they're supposed to get notified. So I've heard that it doesn't happen. It's supposed to.
In that workshop, did you talk about renters also getting notified?
Yes. I said the current occupant plus the property owner should be notified. And like, for example, the case that was adjacent to Wesley that we did, one person owned 15 properties. So that one person can get it, and if they choose not to, and I don't know if they did or didn't, but if they choose not to, then tell those folks they don't know. They find out when council takes action or if a neighbor calls. And I've said, even if, I think per state statute, they may not be able to say something, but they should know. They may have something to say. Some of those folks have been in that neighborhood 15 years, so their opinion is just as valid.
What do you mean, you said you just denied?
We just denied a rezone proposal to demolish 15 houses. and
Okay,
build
so that's not
another
gonna happen.
At the moment. I say at the moment because they can come back in a year. If they substantially modify their plan, they can come back in 6 months. And I never assumed council votes. I've only assumed one time and I was wrong that time. So I just always take it as it comes. There are developers that also wait council members out. I've heard that before. So if they assume that the next 2 times, because they only have 2 more years, because I would be done in January of 26. So if they assume I'll take the same action and wait until June or July of 26, I won't be in office. They might try again. Just never know.
Yeah, I just got a comment on, back on housing. In my neighborhood, and I'm gonna say this to all neighborhood presidents, neighborhood, if you're active in the neighborhood, try, you know, people selling in my neighborhood, houses are being sold left and right. Try to sell to people, let's go, have individual families in it. And we come to find out, talking to people, 3 houses that I know of, would you please sell and let that house be there for somebody that can afford it in the community? Come to find out, we got people that's going around here saying they're gonna build have it for single family. As soon as they get the property, they give it to a corporation. And boom, we're being defeated. And I listened to you talking about how you're gonna do housing, and that's the problem that we're facing. And I don't know what you're gonna do about that. There's no law against it. You can't tell anybody how to sell. And I know people agree, they wanna get as much money as they can. That's all right. But keep it so an individual can afford a thing. If you got a young son or daughter or grandchild, you want them to be able to afford something. But this is being priced right out of the system. And so I don't know what we're gonna do about this thing. And another comment on the budget, I will be at the next meeting. Seems like every time we got something in my neighborhood this Friday, it goes in the CIP. When it go in the CIP, you can pretty well forget about it. It's like you say, you out of office in 2 years plus. Your replacement come along, if you don't tell him, he ain't gonna know about it. It's like this keep dragging on and on and on. So please, send these meetings and let your bosses be heard, and this comes from experience.
What is CIP?
So that's where they,
Capital Improvement Program, it's a
Okay.
10-year investment, so basically everything we're investing in for the next 10 years is. It is, it's only a commitment when ground is broken.
that's true.
It's in there, it's the plan for it, but until the ground is broken, it may or may not happen.
So one burner.
Yeah, it can be. It all depends on what it is. So I don't know what Mr. Roseberg was speaking of, but I would say for that neighborhood, there was an effort that we were talking about. He was real vocal, both when I ran and early on about some of the flooding. So the way that neighborhood was designed decades ago, there is no stormwater runoff. It's just all street. And we were talking, me and Alan King, the former director of Public Works, about 2 controls we could potentially put, like we can't really go in and tear up the neighborhood like we would need to really control it. But there was some flood control on Oliver, which is about 550,000, and I forget where the other piece was, but that was almost $1 million. And when you get into the CIP, you start getting into priorities. And so while that's important to the neighborhood and important to me, if you have something like, I won't say this project did not bump that up. If you have something like Leckley, we're gonna bump that to take care of Leckley. Leckley is the #1 flood issue in Wichita. So the neighborhood may miss out. One thing that has continued to frustrate members of the Douglas Design District is Douglas is supposed to be redone, I think 8 years ago, and they just kept getting kicked out. And even with me in office, I was like determined to make that happen, but I don't like people telling me stuff keeps getting kicked out, like I'd rather just get it done. Then the pandemic happened, we were supposed to start that in 21, that happened, and then we prioritized some projects to do that, so that's the. So that's what he means when something can hit the back burner, it's in there, you can see it, we have our CIP up there, you see all the projects, but really until a final council vote of budget approval with the design, engineering done, and a company that's gonna start the construction. Until that happens, it's not always guaranteed.
So he said something about going to the budget hearing for the city. I've been going for the last 3 years, and they listen to us. They actually do stuff. 3 years ago, I got $100,000 to be MADCD to be proactive in 6.5 neighborhoods. $100,000 3 years ago. Last year, I went and we got 2 extra animal control officers that City Councilor Johnson and Holheisel pushed for last year, and then they got it swung. We got 2 extra. Now this year, I got a free breakfast. He invited me to breakfast, so you can get things. But I asked for 4 things this year, and 2 of them, like my CP officers, just in my estimation, and my 2 boards that I'm the president of 3 neighborhoods, is just not there. He's terrible. But he came and saw me 2 days after that. ICT1, we had a problem, and they weren't really doing, I thought, what they should have been doing. They came and talked, or they sent me emails. And there's 2 things I'm asking for: an audit at the animal services. If any of you called for dogs or anything, you know there's a problem there. And it's not the lieutenant's fault. He's trying to change things, but there's something wrong there, and I think we'll get that. So come. He said there was 20 people. He's right. There was less than 5 people that actually talked. 15 of them or more were from Cowtown. If they wouldn't have been there would have been less than 5 people talk about the budget. And they listen to us. They actually do things for us when we go and talk. So I would say go and talk. And if there's a group of you, they'll even more. Hey, well, the groups, they go by, hey, look at all this group wants this. They will listen to you. So if there's another one coming up, it'll probably be during the day.
Where is the budget meeting?
Yeah, city council go when they're talking about the budget, and you can go up, and if you get 3, 5, 10 of you, they'll listen, and it'll move the needle. So we appreciate you guys doing that.
Thank you, George. It's at City Hall, same place. And the evening meeting that's the only item we have. So most of the time during the public agenda, we listen to you. We may follow up by email or phone call later, or sometimes I'll send a letter to you. The evening meeting, that's all we're doing. So we talked, the whole conversation we're having that night. We were there for 2 hours. Talking to the folks that came up because they took time out of their evening to talk over stuff. Definitely do that. Before everybody leaves, I just remember the August 22nd meeting. After that will be a workshop, and tentatively is when we're going to talk about the housing stuff I told you all about. So just so you know, and it'll come up at the workshop. We've been working for over a year on the housing work. Myself, Vice Mayor Hoheisel, Tasha, and then Rebecca, who's CSR District 3. And we've been meeting with a lot of different groups, talking about things that we should do, things that we shouldn't do, how we can help out, and bringing up all the issues that we've seen from not only the stuff that you've seen from me on the news, but council members have joined me out in District 6, District 3, District 4. There's a lot of issues, so we're looking at doing something. So August 22nd, whether you're there in person or if you want to watch, we should have a workshop on that.
Hey, Councilman Johnson, thank you. This was a great meeting, my first time. I got a lot of good information. I'm glad I just showed up. I wish I could have got on your agenda, but can I take less than 2 minutes to share something really quick? I say less than 2 minutes because that's how much time you have to get out of your house if it catches fire. And I'm here as a representative from the American Red Cross, letting you know that you can get free smoke detectors installed in your house. And the fire department will come out and check the ones that you have or install new ones. All you have to do is get put on the list. So I'm not prepared today. I just showed up to eat. But I can take your name and your number and provide that information so we can get everyone with smoke detectors that needs them. That's very important. And I just wanted to share that.
Thank you. So our meeting next month is going to be the second Saturday. First Saturday is Labor Day weekend. I don't want to interrupt your vacation plans or any barbecues unless you bring me a plate. So September 9th is our breakfast. We'll be here. So we'll be here and I'll be inviting people that we've appointed to different boards so you can learn who represents you on the different boards in the city. They are available. George.
I have one last thing. I'm also on the fireworks committee. And I don't know what you guys thought about the new ordinance. How many tickets you think they buy, $1,000 tickets you think they wrote? How many you think?
Zero.
They wrote 5. So, and if you notice, they did go after midnight stuff, so they were still doing their thing. So, but be vocal about that because it's a work in progress. We've got a committee and right now, Fry's on it in Hoheisel and then some fire and police. But they will listen to us. They will. There's 2, me and another person. Well, there's actually 1 from each district. Do you have a person on that? Yeah. Oh, yeah. I think he was there. But yeah, so we will make changes to it if everyone, the numbers come to us to tell us. So please be aware of that. So.
And George is joining us from District 3. Yeah, thank you for being here. Y'all have a good weekend and we'll see you next month.